Hello, my name is Madison Norris, and I did my research paper on the mandatory use of the policy of body cameras for police officers and the public's perception on how that impacts the rate of police brutality. Um, this was originally this was this policy was originally introduced by President Obama in December of 2014. He mainly introduced it and thought that it was very important to introduce because of the fatal shooting of Michael Brown that happened in Ferguson. This caused a lot of citizen outcry, and he realized that it was very important to address this in some way. So he asked that $75 million be designated to this policy to initiate it, to supply the body cameras, to pay for the training that the police officers would need to use the body cameras. And he mainly put it into action with hopes of improving the encounters that happened between police and citizens, and ultimately to stop police brutality like this from occurring. And he also hoped that it would enhance the perceptions of citizens, the perception that they had on police officers. The importance of this policy, why it's important, is that it can hopefully stop the false accusations that come from citizens, because a lot of the times citizens will file accusations that might not necessarily be true. And before the body camera policy, there really wasn't a way to look back and see if what the citizen was saying was actually what happened. And the same goes for false accusations by police officers. And it just gives them the opportunity to look back and view the footage and see what went wrong, or to justify their actions. It also stops police misconduct. A lot of the times when there's rogue police officers that don't know that they're being watched, they're able to act out in however way they may choose. And with this extra supervision of these body cameras, it hopefully decreases the rate of that police misconduct. And then again, police brutality is the ultimate goal, is to stop police brutality by stopping the police misconduct, and will in turn reduce the chances of police brutality happening. And it's really important because there's major distrust between citizens and police right now because of rogue police officers, because of police brutality happening. It's created this huge mistrust, and it's completely broken the relationship that should be good between citizens and police. Citizens should be able to trust police, and they should be the ones that they can count on when things happen or things go wrong. But that relationship has completely just been destroyed because of things like the shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson. So the policy of body cameras for police officers, it could be very beneficial. It will be very beneficial because, like I said, it's going to repair the citizen and police relationship. It gives them a chance to look back at the police and citizen interactions, which gives them better opportunity for training, because they can look firsthand at what went on with their interaction and learn from it and move forward. And hopefully it prevents future issues from occurring. It prevents those false accusations, the police misconduct, and the police brutality from occurring. And that's the overall goal of this policy. In some of the research, I found that in not even a full year, a total of 842 people were killed at the hands of police. And that's a problem, and it's definitely something that needs to be looked at. Something needs to be put into place to see why these killings are happening the way that they do. And by police wearing body cameras, that's a way to look and see what actually happened. And just something that's really important is that if we don't do something, if we don't initiate a policy such as this one, then these issues are going to keep occurring. And the relationship between citizens and police is going to continue to just diminish. And the trust that citizens should have for police it's going to be gone. So some of the prior research, they it highlighted some negative and positive aspects of this policy. Some positive ones were that it gives them a better look at things like racial profiling, and it does bring us a step closer to ending police brutality. It provides more visibility, and it provides them, an opportunity to look back at what happened at that interaction. It provides kind of some more supervision over police that there's kind of a lack of when they're in the field. And hopefully it would enhance the citizen perceptions and improve those encounters overall. Some negative aspects are that police are not always held accountable. So if a video does come back and it turns out that even though the police did do something wrong, they're not always held accountable for it. And sometimes that video footage may accidentally disappear, or it just gets into the wrong hands and it's not handled the way that it should be. And some people have also said that having body cameras is a violation of their privacy. And that's really one of the main negative aspects of it from a citizen's point of view, is that it violates their privacy. But there has been plenty of research on the effectiveness of the body cameras for police, but there's very little on how the public views the policy. And that is why I conducted this research, to see how they view it and if they support it or not. So I had 4 hypotheses. The first one is that the public will view the policy of mandatory body cameras for police officers as a positive one that significantly decreases the rate of police brutality. The second one is that the public will view the policy of mandatory body cameras for police officers as a negative policy that has 0 impact on the rate of police brutality at all. The third one is that the public will view the policy of mandatory body cameras for police officers as a negative policy that actually increases the rate of police brutality. And my last and final hypothesis was that the public's perception on the policy of mandatory body cameras for police officers and how it impacts police brutality will actually differ due to the person's age, race, or gender. So when going to collect this data, my sample, it consisted of 20 participants that differed in gender, race, and age. And I did this because of my 4th hypothesis, and because my thought was that if I only chose 20 white women in their 30s, that all of their answers would probably be the same. And that goes for the same thing if I were to choose 20 Black men that were all in their 30s, their answers would be very similar, and it really wouldn't give me a good idea of what the public's perception actually is on this policy and how it impacts the rate of police brutality. So I chose this sample just from my family, friends, and coworkers, those that I had easy access to and they were easy to reach and get the survey to them. I created the survey online, and it had 20 questions, and it was designed just so that each participant could only complete the survey once. It was quantitative in nature. The perception-based questions, which was the second part of the survey, was set up with Likert scale response options. And I only had a 2-week time frame to get this survey out to them, for them to take it, to get it back, and to make sure that everything was done the way that it was supposed to be. So creating an online survey like this was the easiest way to do that and to make sure that it got done effectively. And my measures, which were my questions, they consisted of 10 control variables, which were the first 10 questions of the survey. Things like, what are your race? What's your age? And it had different ranges, different options for them to choose from. None of the questions were open-ended. And then the second set of questions were 10 dependent variable questions, which I constructed as statements, and then they could choose on the Likert scale whether or not they strongly disagreed, all the way to whether or not they strongly agreed. The control variables, they determined who the participant was. And like I said, those were the ones that asked their age, race, criminal history, things like that. And the dependent variables, they're the ones that determined their actual perception of the policy. Excuse me. So after I gathered my data from the survey, put it all together, I performed some tests. So the first ones I did was a frequency and descriptive statistic test. And I did this on all of the 10 control variables. And then I also did it on all of the 10 dependent variables. And then after I performed that frequency and descriptive statistic test, I also performed a bivariate analysis test, which that was performed between 5 control variables and 5 dependent variables. For example, I would look at gender, so female and male, and then of those I would see what females and what males were, how they were answering to one of the dependent variables, such as how much they knew about the policy. So the results from these tests, so with the frequency and descriptive statistic test, the results with the control variables, this test helped me determine the participants' age, race, criminal history, personal experience, whether or not they were married, things like that. It showed how many participants had shared factors, how many of them were alike, and how many of them were different. And it just made it possible to differentiate between each participant based on how they answered on those given factors. This test on the dependent variables, it helped to determine the number of participants that had a certain perspective towards the given statement in those final 10 questions. And then on the bivariate analysis test, like I said, it was done between 5 control variables and 5 dependent variables. And this helped to determine the public's perception towards body camera policy by things like their age. It helped to determine the public's perception towards police brutality by gender and by race, and different tests like that. So after gathering all of this data, seeing how the public viewed it, and all of that, I came up with my policy recommendation. And my policy recommendation was that this policy should be implemented for every police department in the United States, because right now it's not, and I think that it should be. The goals and objectives of this policy recommendation are that it would give police departments the capability to learn from their video footage, and it offers them firsthand training from that video footage. The second one is that it gives them better insight into how the police department is handling citizen interactions. So if there is a police officer that's not handling citizen interactions well, or he's handling them violently, then you would be able to know that, and you would be able to address that. And the last one is that it gives the possibility for the rate of police brutality and police corruption to decrease, and that's the main goal overall. And most importantly, there is a need for this change to occur because it'll help hold police accountable, and it offers citizens peace of mind when they're interacting with police. They know that they're on camera, and they know that whatever happens is going to be seen. And then most importantly, all of this helps to hopefully take a step in the right direction to repair the relationship between citizens and police. And that is very important in the criminal justice field because right now that relationship is very broken. My policy recommendation, a little bit more about it. To implement it, the main 2 things that it will require is funds and training. So like I said before, when President Obama initially implemented this policy, he had to ask for $75 million in funds, and that still didn't reach every police department. So the funds that it would require would be a lot. And also having people in the police departments to train the police officers, or having someone able to train them on how to use them, then that, calls for a little bit, extra hands on board. And some obstacles and issues that might arise with this policy recommendation is the willingness to allocate those funds. Not everybody would be on board with that, which is understood, but with the big goal in mind, I think that it would be very worth it. And then the time to to train maybe 1 or 2 police officers in the department to really know the body cameras and be able to train the others. Just the time it would take to train and get to know the body cameras and how to use them is maybe some time that some departments don't have. But the effectiveness is it's difficult to predict because it hasn't been done, but it is a beneficial tool, and I believe that it has the public's support because, like I said, it offers them peace of mind, and it's a step towards the right direction, so the public is behind it. And it's easily promoted and easily justified because of that public support. So in conclusion, we need to be able to guarantee the police and citizen interactions are documented, and this is definitely a way to do that. We need to attempt in some way to put an end to these police issues like police misconduct, false accusations, and police brutality being number 1. And we need to take a step in that right direction, because if we don't do anything, it's only going to get worse. And we need to give these citizens a better peace of mind when they're in the presence of a police officer, because right now, especially with African Americans, that peace of mind is gone. And they're scared when they're in the contact with police officers. And I believe this would give them a peace of mind that things are going to be okay and that they're in good hands. And it provides more supervision over police officers. Right now, when police are in the field, sometimes they're by themselves. There's a lack of supervision. Without the body cameras, there's no way to tell what actually happened in a police and citizen interaction. And this gives that opportunity to look back and see if what happened was justified or not. And most importantly, like I've said many times in this video, is that it begins the process of repairing this broken relationship that exists between police and citizens. And that is the top goal. That is how police officers are going to stay relevant. Without that positive relationship existing, it could ultimately end in chaos. And so I think it's very important to implement this policy to just recognize that we have a problem and we need to fix it. Thank you.